This lecture is on occultism and modern magic. Occultism, even the very term occultism, arose during the middle of the 19th century. And during that time period, various forms of occultism arose in Europe, the UK, and the United States. This period in which occultism became very, very popular in these areas is known today as the Occult Revival. The term occultism was originally popularized by Eliphas Levi. He was a French former subdeacon of the Catholic Church who left the church and then gained fame as a ceremonial magician after he published his book called The Dogmas and Ritual of High Magic in 1856. This book became one of the most influential books of the Occult Revival, and it was famous on a worldwide scale. And it actually remains very popular to this day amongst people who practice the occult magic and witchcraft. This book had many important ideas in it. Levi used the term occultism to refer to the occult sciences such as magic, divination, and scrying. He proposed ceremonial magic as part of an ancient religion predating major world religions, and he suggested that those newer religions oppose magic and the old religion for a variety of reasons. Levi advocates ceremonial magic as a process to commune with the divine outside and within oneself, and he teaches ceremonial magic for the purposes stated above. Levi said that the pentagram represents evil when pointed down and good when pointed up, which is also an idea that remains popular to this day. You might have seen that many times, particularly in horror films. Levi published his still popular image of the androgynous Baphomet with the upright pentagram on his forehead. One of the other early proponents of occultism were the Fox sisters, two very famous spiritualist mediums, and they had a lot to do with the rise of spiritualism and the religion of modern spiritualism. In 1848, the Fox sisters began hearing tapping sounds in their home in Hydesville, New York. And then they began to ask this tapping sound questions, telling it to tap once for yes and twice for no. And by establishing this communication, they drew crowds, and many of those who viewed what they were doing believed that the Fox sisters had actually contacted spirits of the dead. In this case, they believed they had contacted a deceased peddler who had died by murder in their own home before they moved there. The Fox sisters became a huge sensation, and then modern spiritualism emerged out of this with the rise of mini-spirit mediums, and eventually both a worldwide phenomenon and a modern religion arose out of this. Many spirit mediums began performing before audiences throughout the world for entertainment and also for spiritual purposes. The oldest Fox sister, the third sister, Leah Fox, served as the manager for their booking events. Later, P.T. Barnum would actually book events for the Fox sisters as well. Modern spiritualism has some key developments in it. So after the Fox sisters, spirit mediums appeared around the world and began performing seances, and that is sessions in which people gathered to speak to spirits of the departed. The religion known as spiritualism formed, and churches and associations formed alongside the spread of spiritualism. There are still spiritualist churches and organizations in the United States and throughout the world. Spiritualists taught that the human personality does not die, it rather transforms into a spiritual realm after death, and that the spirits of the departed want to guide the living through communication and seances. So another very important movement of the Occult Revival is Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. She was one of the co-founders of Theosophy. She was from Russia. She traveled the world and came to New York during the 19th century. She taught that the phenomena of spiritualism is real, but that the spiritual beings that are being spoken to are just shells and they're not intelligent beings. She co-founded the Theosophical Society in 1875 in New York City with Henry Steele Olcott and William Quan Judge. And she published a very influential 2-volume book called The Secret Doctrine in 1888, in which Blavatsky said all the religions of the world contain the hints of a secret doctrine that predates and underlies those religions. So you're seeing here that there is a trend of occultists pointing to an ancient religion that predates all the modern religions that are in the world today. Some important ideas in theosophy is that there's a secret doctrine whose teachings can empower humans with supernatural powers, such as clairvoyance. The evolvement of spiritual powers in human beings is linked to physical evolution of the species. So we have a link between science and religion going on in the occult. Reincarnation happens in a multi-life process by which human beings develop more and more advanced supernatural abilities. Eventually, human beings will evolve into a new, higher form of being in a future age. And art can be an expression of the human's higher self, which is in constant connection with the divine. So art can, in essence, express spiritual truth. The image you see here is actually a theosophical painting called The Path that was painted by Arthur Machen. And in the middle, you see a knight going up to a higher being. And this is somebody leaving the physical world, or the world of physical knowledge, and gaining higher knowledge. While people to the right and left and underneath are not quite as high on the path as this enlightened person with the sword who just killed a dragon. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn was founded in 1887. It was an initiatory secret society in London that initiated members in what was called the Isis Urania Temple. Many of the members of the Golden Dawn practiced various forms of ceremonial magic and divination, and that was one of the central purposes of the Golden Dawn. The Golden Dawn had many important people in it, particularly as far as the realm of theater is concerned. There were many professional theater artists in this organization, including William Butler Yeats and Annie Horniman, who ended up founding the Abbey Theatre in Ireland together, which became ultimately the National Theatre of Ireland. They published the Golden Dawn published the first known ritual of the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, which is still performed by many contemporary ceremonial magicians of various stripes to this day. They initiated in the Golden Dawn the career of Aleister Crowley, who coined the term magic with a K at the end in order to refer to spiritual ceremonial magic, in order to differentiate it from theater magic. Crowley also created a very famous law called the Law of Thelema, which is stated as, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, love is the law, love under will." This came later to influence the law of Wicca, which is, "And thou harm none, do what thou wilt." Gerald Gardner and Wicca. So speaking of Wicca, in 1954, Gerald Gardner published Witchcraft Today, which was a book in which he argued that the witches persecuted between the Middle Ages and the 18th century in Europe, the UK, and North America could be called witches, but they were not evil. They were practicing an earth-focused ancient religion with prehistoric roots. So again, we go to the prehistoric religion idea. The rituals of this religion were said to involve magical rites, which were often performed in the nude. The practitioners of these rites did not mean to hurt anyone, rather they sought to help and heal others. And they were just communing with their gods, according to him. The primary deities that were invoked for the magical purposes in this witchcraft tradition, according to Gardner, were the great goddess of the moon and the horned god of the hunt, and these remain the two primary deities observed by those who practice Wicca. Gardner used the term Wicca with one C, not to describe the religion itself, but it's an old Scottish word that means wise person, and he used this word to refer to witches. So you could say that a person was a Wicca in Gardner's day. Gardner encouraged all witches to write a book of shadows, which contains the rituals that they create and incorporate into their magical practices. Doreen Valiente was a member of Gardner's coven. She practiced Wicca, and by the way, a second C was added later to the term Wicca, and that term came to be used to refer to the practice of the modern witchcraft religion that followed in Gardner and Valiente's wake. and that has stuck, that spelling. She was in Gardner's coven between 1952 and 1957. Now, Valiente realized that many of Gardner's rituals were not based on ancient sources, but rather based on the magical writings of Aleister Crowley. In fact, Gardner had been a 7th degree member of Aleister Crowley's secret society known as the OTO. So with Gardner's permission, Valiente rewrote many Wiccan rituals and invocations, and the most important of these were her version of the Wiccan Reda, which revised Crowley's law of Thelema to "and thou harm none, do what thou wilt." And she also wrote the Charge of the Goddess, which is a central spiritual expression of Wicca. After Valiente came to the scene and Wicca spread to America, many new Wiccan groups emerged in the UK and the US, including many that were feminist and focused more heavily on the goddess of the moon than the horned god. Magic, with a K, is the usual spelling for ceremonial magic that is used in the Wiccan tradition. So the Occult Revival was a surge of interest in alternative forms of spirituality that arose in Europe and the US between the late 19th and mid-20th century. Leaders of this movement proposed theories and cosmologies about the supernatural world and spiritual entities and forces that exist within them. They incorporated esoteric beliefs and practices into these theories and cosmologies, and they drew inspiration from non-spiritual, non-esoteric fields of knowledge such as art, philosophy, and science. Spiritualism, tarot card divination, ritual magic, and many other esoteric practices surged in popularity during the Occult Revival. And performance and theater, as it turns out, became central in many forms of modern occultism and modern witchcraft that arose during and after the Occult Revival. Aleister Crowley described some rituals of ceremonial magic as dramatic rituals and as plays. He also wrote essays about theater and many plays. William Butler Yeats is a very well-known symbolist playwright. The theosophist Catherine Tingley made theater central to spiritual practice in a California settlement that she established in the late 19th century. Rudolf Steiner wrote 4 occult mystery dramas that were a central spiritual focus for members of his Anthroposophical Society, which was in fact a breakaway group from the Theosophical Society. And the performance of dramatized rituals and the creation of such rituals involving role play is not only common, but central to Wiccan practice. So Catherine Tingley's Universal Brotherhood and Theosophical Society. That was the Universal Brotherhood and Theosophical Society was the name of Catherine Tingley's organization. Her worldview was theosophical. She believed in reincarnation and karma. She believed that there was a secret doctrine predating all religions that is universal. She believed that occult enlightenment is obtained through altruism, that is doing good for other people. And like Blavatsky, she believed that Mahatmas and adepts, secret masters, some of whom were playwrights, passed down secret doctrine through the ages. For Tingley, the purpose of theater was to entertain, to raise money, to convey the principle of universal brotherhood, and to reinforce beliefs in those who lived at the settlement in Point Loma, California. Here is a photo of some of the buildings in Point Loma, California. If you look all the way to the right of this, you see that round, they're all round, but all the way to the right, you'll see one little round domed building sitting off by itself. And that building was actually the home of Albert Spalding of Spalding Sporting Goods, whose wife was a follower of Tingley. And of course, Spalding Sporting Goods continues to this day. Every aspect of the buildings that were built in Point Loma, California, were based upon some occult principle. This is an outdoor Greek theater that still stands on the site of what used to be the Loma Land Greek Theater. This was probably the first attempt to build an outdoor Greek theater that was based on ancient Greek structures. And in this space, Tingley performed plays that she believed had spiritual, theosophical significance. This is a photograph of a performance of what was called a symposium at Loma Land. This was probably taken during the early 1900s. Lomaland was founded in 1897, by the way. I'm guessing that this is around 1910 or so. And this is an image of a symposium, a performance of a play in which ancient philosophers and characters that are known to people, such as Plato, such as Socrates, would come out and state ideas that would align with the teachings of theosophy. This is Rudolf Steiner and Maria Steiner, and they were the head of the Anthroposophical Society. So Steiner, both Rudolf and Maria, started as theosophists, and then they moved away from the Hindu imagery of theosophy and moved towards Rosicrucian, rose and cross imagery in their presentation of spiritual ideas. Their society, the Anthroposophical Society, had several key ideas. It derives much from theosophy, but as I said, it gets more from Rosicrucian symbolism than the Hindu and Buddhist traditions that inform theosophical language. The Steiners believe that occult enlightenment is obtained through the study of complex occult concepts and occult art. They believe that there's a spiritual realm that is just as real and perceivable as the physical realm, and this is something that the Theosophists agreed with them on, but pretty much most occultists of the time period agreed on. And they believe that the human being's goal is to identify spiritual entities that aid or interfere with the development and to balance these influences in their lives. The purpose of theater for the Steiners is to entertain, to develop the human capacity for clairvoyance by showing realistic representations of what the spirit world looks like to those who have already developed the human organ for suprasensory perception. And by doing the above, anthroposophical theater seeks to enable human beings to perceive and balance the various spiritual influences in their lives. This is the Goetheanum. Now the Goetheanum, this was first built in 1919. It is in Dornach, Switzerland, and unfortunately this first Goetheanum, which was made of wood, was burned down by an arson who did not agree with the anthroposophist on New Year's Eve in 1922. After the first Goetheanum was burned down, Rudolf Steiner designed and oversaw the construction of a second Goetheanum, and this Goetheanum was made of fireproof concrete, which was a very practical idea. I actually had the opportunity back in 2000 to get a grant that took me to the Goetheanum to witness for the 4 mystery plays that Rudolf Steiner wrote to be performed in this very space. And it was a rather amazing experience. This is the interior of the Goetheanum. This is a view from the stage to the back of the wall. And as you can see, there are amazing stained glass mirrors on the right and left side. Each of the stained glass, I'm sorry, not stained glass mirrors, but windows. And each of these are all one color. So there's a green one, a blue one, kind of an orange one, a yellow one, and when the sun shines through, it casts those colors into the space. When the theaters are running, they will actually bring down covers that will prevent the light from shining through. And there at the back is a space where a group of people who do an interesting kind of group chanting will chant at different points during the performance. This is an image of a performance from one of Rudolf Steiner's 4 mystery dramas. On this page, you see the spiritual or astral landscape, which is, according to Steiner, a replica of what he saw when he traveled in these realms in his spirit. And the being in the closest to the camera in the brown robe is a human being traveling in these spaces, these astral spaces, and the other beings in this world are astral beings, also represented beings that Steiner claimed to interact with when he entered these realms. And in Rudolf Steiner's mystery dramas, not only could human beings travel into astral realms and see spiritual beings, but astral and spiritual beings could appear in the physical realm, as is happening in this space with the same character from the previous image who is being communicated with by this three spiritual beings that are present in the previous slide. In this room is another person in blue at the back of the room. That person is actually in the physical world and does not necessarily see or hear the three spiritual beings speaking to the man in the suit at the right. Rudolf and Maria Steiner created a form of movement, sort of like a dance, called eurythmy. And eurythmy was a form of movement that was meant to show the way the soul moves in the spiritual realm. And so there are some very specific movement patterns that are used in this form. And if you look at the people in this image, they're both wearing this kind of semi-transparent silk cloth that flows through the air. And this also represents the colors and movements of spiritual beings and souls within the astral realms. This is an image of Aleister Crowley in full magical regalia of a secret order that he created himself called the Argentum Astrium. And in this image, he is at his altar with lots of things that were prescribed for the magician's altar in Eliphas Levy's book, The Dogma and Ritual of High Magic. You see him with a wand, you see him with a crown, you see him with a bell on a string. You see a sword, and in special case of Crowley's situation, there seems to be a crystal ball and some oil and a copy of the Book of the Law, which he received, so he says, from a messenger of the god Horus. Aleister Crowley became something of a pop icon in film and in rock music. This is an image of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album from 1967, and you see a lot of different figures behind them, famous actors, famous musicians and philosophers, and up there at the top, second to left, is Aleister Crowley. He was referenced by many musicians throughout the years, and his name pops up in many different horror and fantasy stories to this day. In addition to his organization, the Argentum Astrium, Crowley became the head of another order called the Ordo Templi Orientis. In both orders, the lema, which is the name of Aleister Crowley's religious philosophy, was the central idea. Some of the central ideas of the lema are that every man and every woman should come into alignment with their divine will. There is a law of the lema which says, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." Now this phrase would become revised in the Wiccan tradition to "And thou harm none, do what thou wilt." Thelema is rooted in what Crowley describes as primordial occult knowledge. So the idea of an ancient religion is returned to here. And Crowley was a bit of an iconoclast and said that any religion or belief that interferes with will must be abandoned in order to become tuned in with the divine. And Thelemites believe that practicing ceremonial magic can help the initiate identify and pursue his or her divine will. In Thelema, theater had several purposes. One was simply to entertain, one was to raise money, one was to publicize Thelema, and one was to raise magical force to the end of practicing magic, which Crowley defined as the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. This is a photograph of a 1910 performance of a ritual that Crowley wrote called The Rites of Eleusis with members of his Argentum Astrium. It took place in London in Caxton Hall. As you can see, his actors are all robed in occult garb. Crowley is standing on an altar in the middle of the room, and there's a magical circle on the floor. One of Crowley's most famous rituals is called the Gnostic Mass, and the Gnostic Mass takes a spin on the Catholic Mass, but instead of being Christian themed, it's a celebration of the divine feminine and the divine masculine in performance. This is an image of a priestess in the Gnostic Mass during a performance. This photo, it was taken in the early 20th century. The Gnostic Mass is still performed in contemporary America and also in Europe and the United States and also in Australia and by members of the Ordo Templi Orientis. In this image is the high priestess, I'm sorry, not the high priestess, is the priestess of the Gnostic Mass performing with the priest of the Gnostic Mass. This is an image of Gerald Gardner, the father of Wicca. This is an image of Gerald Gardner in his Museum of Witchcraft. This is a playful moment in which he is posing in one of the magical circles in the museum, pointing a sword threateningly at a demonic figure that is sitting outside of his magical circle. Thus, he is playfully creating the image of a sort of Faustian relationship for the entertainment of the camera. Now, Gerald Gardner created the first known strain of Wicca, and after that strain moved about, Wicca spread into many different branches. But even though there are many different kinds of Wicca, there are some primary ideas that are shared. One is that there was a primordial prehistoric religion in which worshippers praised and tried to commune with a goddess of the moon and a horned god of the hunt. During the Middle Ages and the early modern period, according to Wiccans, those who were persecuted as witches were actually practitioners of this primordial religion. Wicca, later changed to Wicca, means wise person. But in the movement today, the term can be used to refer to either practitioners or the religion itself. Wiccan ritual is used to raise magical energy within the witch by uniting them with the feminine or masculine divine force of the universe. It's practiced in covens. These covens are generally very selectively put together, and they tend to be small groups of people. Gerald Gardner's Wiccan rituals serve several purposes. One is to commune with the divine. The other is to cause magical change, which is similar to Aleister Crowley's use of performance in some cases. It is to create a shared or isolated spiritual experience for the person performing ritual. And it is to experience the divine aspect of nature. Wiccans, most of them practice an earth-focused style of magic, and what this means is that they often perform rituals in nature. They often hold to a form of spirituality called eco-spirituality, which suggests that the earth is both the goddess that sustains us, but also an environment that should be taken care of. So the healthier the goddess is, the healthier magic is and human beings are. And so Wiccans tend to focus on nature and taking care of it. For instance, when rituals are performed in natural spaces, Wiccans usually adhere to leave nothing behind, leave the space cleaner and healthier than you found it kind of policy. This is an image of several of the objects that go on the Wiccan altar. Some of these objects are seen in the image with Aleister Crowley before, the wand, the bell. Those objects were both in the altar image with Aleister Crowley earlier. Instead of a sword, in this case, the Wiccans use an athame, which is a black-handled dagger. We see incense instead of scented oil in this case. God idol, goddess idol, those are objects that are specific to the Wiccans. And then we have cakes, a pentacle, a bowl with water, a bowl with salt, and a cup. Many of these objects, with the exception of the goddess and god figures and the cakes, and the bowl and the salt. All the other objects were recommended by Eliphas Levi for the objects that somebody practicing ritual magic should use. So as the occult revival was taking place in the late 19th century in Europe, the UK, and even in the United States, Symbolist Theatre began to emerge as the first wave of the avant-garde theatre in Europe and the UK. Symbolist Theatre first took form in Paris and London during the late 1880s, and the Symbolist artists used theatre to represent the spiritual realms of existence. Pretty much all Symbolist Theatre artists, and for that matter, Symbolist artists in general, were interested in occultism, and many were in fact practicing occultists themselves. There are many well-known Symbolist playwrights that you can look into, and their work is quite fascinating. I've just put down 3 of the best known here, one being Madame Rashield, and I do have one of her plays for you to read if you choose in this learning unit. William Butler Yeats and Maurice Maeterlinck. I also have another Maeterlinck play in this particular unit that you can look at. So I did want to let you know that there's a supplemental materials section in this learning unit, and it contains materials that delve into the occult aspects of symbolist drama and theater. If you're interested in learning more about those, please feel free to use these as you write your essays for this learning unit.